Why I got into gold. Here's my TED Talk idea submission. Run through the presentation today and get some of your feedbacks. So why I got into gold? Starting with gaming economics, then to talk about the global exchange platform, and lastly, my further investigation that got me into gold. So why did others got into gold? I think when I was first starting investing, I took a lot of, did a lot of research on, why people got into gold, for insurance purposes, as a hedge. There's no counterparty risk, culture, because a lot of culture like India, China, we love just getting into gold. Then this is all that background idea about, El Dorado, that there's aliens that we used to essentially collect gold and give it to the aliens. And so it kind of ran through our blood because our ancestors collected gold because our gods back then is what we used to give as offering. So a lot of different reasons. And the modern economics idea was about gold is a store of value. It has all property of money, fungible, divisible, durable, transferable, and scarce. So, but then, is that a reason why I got into gold? Actually, the idea was a little bit different. You'll find this probably interesting. So I love video games. Ever since when the Nintendo first came out, I started playing role-playing games. I programmed my own role-playing games, and as time progresses, video games got better. I continue to, from time to time, my spare time, play some massive online role-playing, so they call that MMORPG, including a lot of famous titles from Blizzard, Square Enix, even in Asia, the Kingsoft, that's a big game maker. So now, then I realized after a while that many games that I play end up becoming a turnoff for me after a while, mainly because of its poorly designed game economics. In fact, all of these massive persistent world RPG games became a turnoff. I'll give you an example here. Diablo 3 was great because I know it's a great, awesome game. But when it first came out, it introduced its own auction house, online auction house. Because back in the day, people used to use eBay and other means to trade virtual items online and will be able to sell. So they thought they kind of capitalized that and include that in Diablo 3. So, but unfortunately, that killed the entire game because all of a sudden, items which are very hard to attain in the game, you can easily buy it for like $1. So why spend the time playing the game? And there are other many examples of many game apps that you can think of that kind of killed the whole game because the more money you spend, the better you become. Especially in Asia, it's very popular to be able to, you'll never beat some player on some battle over the app just because you didn't spend money, right? So in Chinese, a lot of them people call it the are you an RMB or CNY or RMB player, which means obviously we can't beat you because you spend money. So and it's really a big huge sink of money to play games, and a lot of times just kind of discourage some people to play games. No matter how good you are in terms of skill, you'll never be able to beat someone who just spend money on it. So with that in mind, with all those different reasons of why the economics kind of essentially killed the game or why I stopped playing many of the games, I thought of an idea because I'm in software, to actually do a startup with some of my friends about developing a game economics engine to essentially be able to balance the economics for any game. Or it can be a platform where people can deploy. So let's just say you have a game like Candy Crush, but if you want to people to put in money or to have items which you can buy other items, essentially we will help you to balance your platform so that the game continues to be fun. But in addition to that, there's also the inter-economics between games. So let's talk about that. So now then let's talk about game economics. Game economics, so you really have to start with how a virtual world works. So let's start with how do you get that started. starting with a world of nothing. So like think of Minecraft, right? To get your first Minecraft game going, you kind of have to start mining your resource. Cut down your wood, collect this resource, collect that, and then the next is to become many, right? You have multiple users for equality AI. So at some point in time, though, when two become many, and once you start collecting this resource, and there's also many different types of resource, you will realize that you actually need a median exchange. Median exchange in terms of have all this resource, what can I all commonly represent it so that's not confusing to, trade my 5 plank of wood for your 2 stacks of silver, etc. So I think this is where money came in the real world as well. As a same example, just just do a game world. Just rethink about that whole thing. Is you obviously need something of value that's going to be available on my virtual game. Like let's just say, a plank of wood. Let's just say it's going to be limited in quantity. So that's kind of how everything gets started. Now to take it to the next level. As the king to your island, or to your game island, you can call it, right, in a virtual world, you might then decide that, hey, I will create my own currency. So instead of trading based on plank of wood, I'm going to create a paper, with my stamp on it, which with the guarantee will trust to trade it in for plank of wood, shall you decide that you ever want to. So all of a sudden, money became something that's backed by trust. So think of, kind of it is the same today. Like with the a lot of the currency, it's not backed by gold anymore, so it's just backed by essentially trust. But there's also the issue of, after such a long time, as people start forgetting or knowing, all this background. So I think thinking back on just building a basic economic system gets you thinking about a whole monetary system that we have today. Now, come back to our example. As a game maker, you will need to create your own currency, very much like the king of your island. So think as a game maker, most games, they created their own individual currency, either the jewels or the gold coin, which you have to you could either get by completing missions, or you can put real world money into it. But one of the key concepts I want to talk about here is, why does people stop playing the game? Or what do you feel a loss? You do feel a sense of loss when you stop playing a game. And why is that? In the real, after some thinking, it's actually, you have just spent so much time on playing that game. I mean, if you're a little bit younger, your mom will probably come to you and say, you played this game for all this time, what do you get out of it? So aside from find your skill becomes a little better, that all your labor that you spent mining or collecting actually gone to nothing, into a big void. So now let's expand that idea to about intergame and all this problem that we're trying to solve, which is playing game is kind of essentially like labor. So should your resource really just disappear? And the idea is about, if you have to spend money on this game, so when the game kind of just dies off, what happens to all your money? It kind of goes to the game maker, obviously. But wouldn't it be great if you have a platform to balance, exchange all that resource so that you can take not just your work, but the money that you have put into one game and move that into another game or the next game that you play? So here's my bullet game. Your resource that you have in the game is technically labor, and the summation of all labor in the game world, so it could be many different users, is technically the economy or GDP of that game, or that game platform, or that game, all the users of that game. Now let's bring that idea to international trade, right? We use the idea of today's international trade into gaming on our platform. So what does that translate into? A global exchange platform for games. So let's talk about that. So now, if we have a common currency, would you be able to transfer or bring your currency from one game to another, as we mentioned? Now, and thus you can convert the time spent, labor, on your previous game into your next game. Well, obviously, there's going to be some exchange rate based on the game's popularity, right? Because obviously, if you spend all this time on this game, but the game kind of died off and the game is not popular anymore, that game or the currency you have in that game is no longer worth as much per se, because the total amount of user, if you think about the GDP, it's kind of like the country kind of shrinks or kind of dies. The money itself essentially is not worth as much. So think of it almost like, a country not doing well. This game, if you used to have 10,000 population of 10,000, all of a sudden you're down to population of 2. All that currency in that game is not going to be worth much because of the users that's remained on that previous game. So if you create an exchange base based on game popularity versus something simple formula, obviously it could get a lot more complicated, but a base formula of something like total users times total number of hours per user. So that would kind of give you how popular the game is, which is how many users you have, and on average, how many hours each user play to get your total economy, essentially. Now, if you make that kind of like a trend chart, you can kind of compare one game to another in terms of total economy. And then you can set up some sort of exchange rate between the game. Now, then the next question is, should this be an open exchange, which is just based on trend to determine, per se, the GDP of each game to determine exchange rate, or would the game owner say, I don't want to do that. I want to fix the exchange rate between my game and that game, either for a period of time or whenever they choose to. So all of a sudden, now obviously let's talk about the caveat of being fixed by the game owner. Is if the game owner overcharge or undercharge, then people or other gamers may decide not to move their currency into that game, or that which may affect the game's its own popularity, because if a lot of other gamers are moving into this game, then by moving their resource into it, obviously it's good for the game owner, or the new game or the new popular game owner. So, but otherwise, if you charge too high an exchange rate, some people may say, hey, I'm going to take my previous game's currency and move to a different game because it's not worth it moving into your game. So that kind of set up the global exchange platform. So now, once you have a platform that kind of like access exchange, isn't this kind of like, a lot of websites like, I'm going to use points.com here, where you can kind of exchange points? Well, actually, the more you think about it, it's actually more like today's economy with Forex. And the fact that you have many economy, which is essentially a fixed exchange rate, but that they control the exchange rate. Either, let's just say, in our case, in Hong Kong, we're pegged to the U.S., that's kind of fixed. And the other methods were in other countries, they are either being managed or or it's floating. I think almost all countries today essentially manage their currency. Let's just say in the U.S. they probably have the exchange stabilization fund, etc., which does something similar. So now, then our next question then is, what's preventing, if we have all that set up, what's going to prevent a game maker themselves to start adding zeros to their currency and taking their currency to exchange to another game? So how do we actually monitor for total currency in the game, which means is the total currency versus the total user and user hour in GDP, which is essentially, if you look at it, that is the problem we have today, probably with many countries that's printing a lot of money and putting a lot of zeros behind their system, their total currency, either through banks or other means of through central banking. Now then we thought, hey, that's really interesting. Now, how does the real world, is this a financial problem that we can model? And now, actually, if this is a same problem as what we're seeing today, if I have such global exchange platform, if I can model this over and over again, would I be able to come up with a solution of what might solve financial, currency, monetary, and global exchange problem today? This brings then to our further investigation. Our interesting inflection point was obviously our investigation of IMF and its special drawing rights, which is essentially, you can call it the inter-country money. So we won't go into the detail of all the IMF and SDR for those who are not familiar, but I think many of you watching this video probably are familiar with the recent development. Essentially, the SDR is a bucket of currency, essentially fixed by the percentage of the international powers. And I think in a sense, I would say in the parallel in our economic engine is being able to fix a percentage by the game maker, or the game maker can fix the percentage with the agreement of the other game maker that it is exchanging with. Now, I think there is obviously good benefit of this fixed economics or fixed exchange rate or fixed percentage for the SBR is being able to hedge against manipulators, right? So if you have a open exchange or a market rate, then essentially some big player can come in and totally crash your game or totally crash your economics or your currency by just essentially selling it along or dumping it. So there are so much parallels between what we're trying to build versus the real economy. So now what we thought is interesting for the TED Talk discussion is, what if we can implement stuff like multi-thread economics, which means is let's allow both open and fixed economy at the same time, or the exchange being fluctuating by free market and fixed at the same time. So we allocate, say, a percentage of all global transactions by open and another remaining percentage by fixed. i.e. 10% will be traded on open, or 90% is on fixed. So what we mean by 10% and 90%, what we mean by that is taking all the transactions, but doing each transaction in two ways. So doubling all the global transactions. Now, part of it will fix it by fixed exchange rate. Another percentage, or probably a smaller percentage initially, maybe even 1 or 2%, to be based on a open rate. So what would that end up changing? So imagine two entire, all the transactions in the world, all the currency transactions in the world, but operating that with two transactions each time, one based on free market, one based on fixed. And the end, obviously the end result, you will just multiply the final results based on a percentage that's set up, let's just say 10 to 90. Or there could be other creative solution as a thread, which can be a multiple mix then, right, between what percentage of the total value is going to be based on the weighting of multiple threads. So in summary, now let's think about if we are able to apply this and also be able to say, hey, I'm going to do not just simulation of all this, but also being able to do a switch over, which means if economics is so good in free market or fixed rate of one or other creative solution, can I switch over to that system entirely? Or to create policy to say, hey, we agree, every month we can actually backward adjust to the other system based on the weighting, if that's going to be better for the overall economy. Now, lastly, obviously, then there's always the question of, okay, well, obviously what's good for one person is not going to be good for another, but I think we can also look at allowing market participants to be a volunteering base, to say, hey, I'm going to sign up for this, which allows certain people, will allow voting criteria at end of each period to do a backward adjustment. And it could be a percentage of your funding allocation. I mean, we can get a little more complexity in terms of how the whole system will work. But I think the message for everyone to think about is, wouldn't we all learn a lot by being able to do multi-threading economics based on both a allocation of open and fixed rate, just run two entire parallel systems and see how the market would really fold out, rather than being fixed. And with one system today where if the economy crashes, then everything is game over. Well, we say, hey, we should have went back when we should have done a free market. Hey, why don't we do that today? Let's do a virtual system which does all the transactions in parallel. Now, obviously, there's going to be a gray market to worry about in terms of transaction that's being done in cash, and there's all this discussion about war on cash, etc. Right now, should we only be applying? Perhaps we can only apply this for the digital economies today. Okay, so all of this got us actually into Go, which is moving from doing gaming into looking at real-world economics, and which brought to our conclusion of we ought to be investing in some gold. Thank you for watching this. I hope you guys like this video. If you do, please click like, and hopefully we make it on the TED Talk.